businesses. Call Goldilocks at 708-889-5600.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. 2 weeks to slow the spread of fascism. Where have I heard that before? Well, actually, it was in the case of COVID in America. It was 2 weeks to slow the spread that platformed fascistic policies. So this would be the opposite. President Trump yesterday, before the 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time deadline, of course, agreeing to a ceasefire with the Iranians as brokered by the Pakistanis. Posting on Truth Social, the president, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with the definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. We've received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the U.S. and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. That's very rosy considering what's in that 10-point proposal from the Iranians. The U.S. must fundamentally commit to guaranteeing non-aggression, number one. Okay. Number two, continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. Number three, accept that Iran can enrich uranium for its nuclear program. Well, this is the hamster wheel we've been on for years, isn't it? We're just doing it for our nuclear program, except that's not true. Number four, removal of all primary sanctions on Iran. Number five, remove all secondary sanctions against foreign entities that do business with Iran. Number six, end all UN Security Council resolutions targeting Iran. Sure, well, who cares? The UN. Vestigial organization. Number seven, end all IAEA resolutions on Iran's nuclear program. Again, this is not going to be enforced by international organizations. It's going to be enforced in the region and by the West or not at all. Number eight, compensation payment to Iran for war damage. No. Number nine, withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from the region. What the region, I think, needs some definition. And number 10, ceasefire on all fronts, including Israel's conflict with Hezbollah in Lebanon. I don't think that those 10 points where Trump sort of characterized this as substantial agreement, I don't actually think there's much substantial agreement, and I don't think you're going to see much of any of that memorialized into anything that is lasting. And in point of fact, even on the other side, with the suggestion that the strait will be open for the next 2 weeks as a show of good faith, the some of the scuttlebutt coming out of the region suggests it will be more open, but certainly not with respect to traffic like was flowing through the strait pre-conflict. And also with, according to the Iranians in their statement, with sort of Iranian approval and oversight and tolls being paid and so forth, which could be additionally problematic. So this 2-week ceasefire may not go the full 2 weeks, despite Trump's customary optimism here. Now, of course, many, including pollster Mark Penn, argued that he had to take the deal when the Iranians responded and said, we're willing to do this.
Well, I think the president had to do it if he could get terms that include an unconditional opening of the strait, which
because
it sounds
the
like he's
markets
got.
had to look at that and say.
He has to do it because, look, people are, in my latest poll, 51% support the war, 54% said it was justified, but 57% said if he could get a good deal, he should take it. So I think it's a risky 2-week period because it enables them to regroup. But on the other hand, the president, if he thinks he has a real opportunity to come out with a negotiated victory, then I think he had to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we'll see whether or not he actually got unconditional access to the Strait. Number one. Number two, I don't think I'm not so concerned about Iran regrouping. There's only so much regrouping in terms of ballistic missiles and drones and the military industrial complex that you could do in 2 short weeks, which, again, if they play games in the Strait, may be much shorter lived than 2 weeks. For more on all of this, please be joined by Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, President, American Islamic Forum for Democracy, co-founder of the Muslim Reform Movement. He's a former United States Navy lieutenant commander and a candidate for Congress in Arizona 4, the 4th District in Arizona. Dr. Jasser, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan. It's great to be with you.
So do you agree with Mark Penn that, once they blinked and said, okay, don't, end our civilization, to borrow a phrase, that Trump had to provide this ceasefire period?
Well, I think, the bottom line is we're still in a war footing. The back and forth that might happen and President Trump was successful in that now the straits are going to be opened a bit and we'll be able to pass some ships. And the regime is weaker than it's ever been in 47 years. And as you laid out, the disarmament, the destruction of their missile capacity, their inability to really have any remaining Air Force or Navy, the decimation of echelons of their leadership, of the Khomeinist spiritual leaders are all gone. So this regime is simply a small portion of what it ever was. And it bought us a few weeks. It doesn't mean the war is over. The analogy I've used for folks to think about is, Israel's war against Hamas. If you look at what happened with Assad in Syria, ultimately what we're forgetting about is the trajectory of the organic revolution in Iran. That's the long game. The short game is to get the straits back open, to try to get the world economy back to a reasonable level and begin to signal the end of massive war operations, but not necessarily a war footing, because the regime is fratricidal, it's suicidal. This is why it can't have nuclear weapons. To them, mutually assured destruction is a goal. It's not an obstacle. So they ultimately, if you look at the parameters as you laid out, those 10 points, it's surrender. Basically, President Trump is asking them to surrender. No more missile program, no more uranium enrichment, no more, threatening and fueling the proxies of the Houthis and Hezbollah. They're not going to do that. Now, if they do that, that's surrender, and the people will be able to begin a further movement in their revolution, which they started all the way back since 2009. And that's what I see as the goal here, is to give more room and oxygen to the revolution, and that we've been knocking out the besieged empanelments throughout the country. And I think that's really the long game here.
Well, what I mean, when you talk about the trajectory of the counter-revolution to this 50-year revolution, real regime change, what do you think the trajectory is at this point? I mean, or is it impossible to determine?
Well, I think, if you look at ever since the Masih Amini beginnings in 2019 of the Women, Life, and Liberty, the people no longer, fear is not an issue. So the executions have been increasing exponentially in the past week or two. The regime is, if you look economically, the economy is their money, the riyals in Iran are equal to $1 is 1.5 million riyals. So their domestic economy is completely trash.
Yeah.
Now, the deep state is surviving because they use foreign fuel. And that's what President Trump, when he talked about civilizational attack, the bridges, the energy sector, et cetera. And this is where the death cult saw themselves really on the verge of decimation, was if they lose that financial support of the deep state, the revolution will take over and it's done. So the people no longer have any fear. So the trajectory is going to be, once they get the green light and they know that air operations are done from the West, hopefully not done completely, because I hope and pray President Trump doesn't say, okay, no more operations at all, because the people need to understand that we have their back. when it comes to, if they start doing more genocidal operations against people demonstrating in the streets from the besieged, et cetera, then we need to begin again operations to make sure that doesn't happen. But hopefully we're not going to need boots on the ground. We shouldn't have boots on the ground because they have an organic revolution that has included not only women's movements, workers' movements, university students, unions, and store shopkeepers, et cetera, across the country. And that's going to, I think, start to regain momentum once they know that the air operations of the past 4 to 6 weeks is at least for the most part done.
Would you agree that Trump's rhetoric about whatever currently constitutes the regime in Tehran, is even something that Norman Vincent Peale would blush at in terms of its optimism? The idea that this is a different set of people, that they're more professional and they're less radical. There's really no indication of that. And there's a lot of contra indicators to that. Like, for example, this whole matter of, you shall receive permission from Tehran for any ships that want to pass through the strait, even during the ceasefire period. And they're threatening again this morning that if you don't get permission from Tehran, then we have, right of refusal to attack those ships to the extent we're able to. It's just what every indication you just mentioned, the executions ramping up, every indication of, again, whatever is left, and that seems to be hard to get a handle on because people are getting taken out routinely, as happened this weekend. But, it's the same. It's some different names, but it's the same old program.
100%. And this is, if you look in historical war footing, when you get to the table and you're trying to negotiate an armistice or a surrender of one side or the other, there may be some verbiage used that might not appear rational because you see the enemy is using children, telling them to get backpacks to surround power plants. Yes. And this is not a rational enemy. This is a suicidal, genocidal, theocratic enemy that is basically struggling for its last breaths of survival. So I think this is just part of the normal back and forth that in order to have a table to sit at, they use some language to say that maybe they're better than the ones before, but the deep state is the deep state, and they're trying. Actually, I'm surprised. One of the big surprises I've had is we haven't taken out their media arms. Press TV, Iranian TV continues. It's not Baghdad Bob, but it's Tehran Tom, if you will, that continues to lie and deceive about any capacity that they have left and what's going on and the threats that they've given the West. There's been no success at all of any operations from Iran. They had a massive loss with, thank God, we brought our 2 pilots back, on Easter Sunday. And, this type of loss that they continue to suffer, pretty soon their military, when they can't pay them, will start taking off their uniforms. Will start, the lower levels, if you will start falling apart. And that hasn't happened yet, and they're trying to maintain that stranglehold, and I'm sure they're exerting punishments on those who even question the leadership, but that's going to take months to happen. You remember the Syrian Revolution took 15 years, and even with that, Israel's operations over December 24 and January 25, that sealed influx of weapons and money into Syria is what finally broke Assad's back. So what is it going to take for the IRGC true leadership to escape to Moscow and end it? It's unknown because we don't have that much information right now as far as exactly what's happening internally within the regime.
A friend of the show, though I don't agree with him on this matter, and founder of the American Conservative, Taki Theodoropoulos, writes in a recent piece that the Trump's Persian adventure is doomed. And he makes a comparison to the Peloponnesian War. He essentially makes the Thucydides trap argument. And I don't really see that because, this is not, we are not Athens, and Iran is not Sparta. This is not like a rising power coming to challenge an existing power, and war is inevitable. I don't see this as sort of an Athenian overreach, if we can use some historical comparisons, since some critics of what's happening are using them. And I just wanted to, especially like substantive arguments from conservatives, I wanted to address. So that's my take on essentially his thesis, but I wanted to get yours.
Gosh, that's not only ahistorical, it's hysterical. I don't understand where that's coming from, because if you look at the trajectory of 47 years, 5-6 presidents have played defense against a regime that has been playing offense. They not only took our hostages on day one, and President Reagan got them to release them because he threatened offensive action, but then they were the founders of suicide bombing with killing our troops in Lebanon, and then we took them out of there. They then committed thousands of acts against our troops in Iraq and across the region. The Houthis have attacked us. On and on has been offensive operations globally, domestically, and through Hamas and other surrogates, Sunni and Shia radicalization. So they've been the primary cancer globally. And now finally we have an offense where it has been 100% to zero success. And somehow we're saying that this didn't have an effect on the security of America and on the beginning of the end of forever wars. This is how you end forever wars, is you get them, just like in World War II, we defeated enemies that were attacking us suicidally. We told it, we put the Japanese in their place and the Nazis, and finally defeated them. And this is much different and actually more apt for success, because there's an organic revolution happening in Iran. We didn't just, like in Iraq, decapitate a dictatorship and sort of leave this non-functioning state. There's a revolution that can possibly succeed. They may end up having quite another generation to recreate a successful society, if you will. But that's going to be far better now. We are left today far better and far safer than we were 2 months ago and for the last 47 years.
There was this piece by Lee Smith in Tablet several years back that provided sort of an analysis of why things did not go well for the United States in Afghanistan in particular. This was after the Taliban took Kabul, when we started to withdraw. And one of the things that Lee Smith went back to, which traces back to an Arab historian from the 14th century, was this notion of asabiya, which is group solidarity. What drives the success of the rising tribe is its group solidarity. Its awareness of itself as a coherent people with a drive for primacy is frequently augmented by religious ideology. And so the stronger the tribe's group solidarity, the stronger the group. Assimilating the conqueror by imposing its will and worldview on them, the victor lays the foundations of new civilization. But the goal of civilization from the outside entity carries the seeds of its own demise against the group solidarity, is essentially the sort of dynamic that he lays out. And that certainly seems persuasive to me when thinking about Afghanistan. And state building, nation building. But it seems like this, first of all, what we're doing in Iran is very different, number one. And number two, the Iranian people don't have that group solidarity. This regime does not enjoy the group solidarity that, unfortunately, the Taliban did in Afghanistan. It's very different.
Oh, it is 100%. And as Lee lays out in his book, A Strong Horse, he talks about the fact that the only way to defeat these tribal mafioso-type fascistic movements, be it the Al-Qaeda, ISISes of the world, or be it the theocratic Khomeinis of the world, ideologically, is to put them in their place and have a resounding defeat, which is truly peace through strength. They will not be defeated by this slow JCPOA nonsense where we hand them billions. They will continue to use that to defeat us and see us as weak. So ultimately, the nation-building effort was doomed from the beginning, because there was no movement of modernization, a movement of liberalism, if you will. And Iran is not only will soon, God willing, be post-theocracy, but it's post-monarchy also. So, yes, the Pahlavis might have a role in transition, but that the people of Iran now have had it with theocracy and with monarchy, and hopefully they will start to evolve into a peri-Western type nation, if you will. So the tribalism is why the Marxists and the jihadists work together against the West. The only weapon the Chinese and the Islamists have is tribalism and the suppression of individual identity. Free markets and the success of the West is part of the threat, the main threat to the tribalism of the Islamists. And right now, Iran could shift the 1,000-year trajectory of tribalism in the Middle East, which is exactly why President Trump is the right president at the right time, because he's telling them, you know what? You're doomed to failure, and we're going to defeat you while we have the opportunity, and your people are knocking at your door, and we're going to give them the oxygen to do that now.
Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, he's a medical doctor. He's president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, co-founder of the Muslim Reform Movement, former U.S. Navy lieutenant commander, and Republican candidate for Congress in Arizona 4. Dr. Jasser, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great. And he joined us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest growing independently owned business bank, a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.